On a stage in Shenzhen, a robotics company unveils a life-sized, hyper-realistic humanoid built specifically to live in someone's home and never leave. And within days, the exact same country that built it quietly moves to restrict a completely different kind of AI companion millions of its own citizens had already fallen in love with. That is real. It happened within weeks of each other. It's been independently reported. And the contradiction sitting between those two stories says more about where this technology is actually headed than either headline does on its own. Every claim in this video comes from verified company statements, government regulatory, announcements, and peer-reviewed academic research, because a topic this genuinely contested deserves careful, honest reporting rather than just a viral reaction. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's being built, what critics are actually arguing, and why China's own government is pulling in two directions on this at once. Here's where the story actually has to start. Because you can't understand why companion robots became a genuine business opportunity in China without first understanding the specific demographic pressure driving companies straight toward this exact product category. China is currently navigating a well-documented combination of an aging population, a declining birth rate, and a growing share of adults living and remaining single well into their 30s and beyond, a combination that's pushed loneliness and elder companionship from what one industry analysis specifically described as a soft cultural concern into genuine economic planning. Here's why that shift matters so directly to the robotics industry specifically. A Chinese tech analysis covering this exact shift noted that factory floor industrial robots compete on straightforward, easily certified metrics like uptime, payload capacity, and total cost of ownership, while companion robots compete on something considerably harder to measure, but just as commercially real: presence, responsiveness, memory, and a buyer's underlying fear that nobody will be there when something actually goes wrong. Think about what that distinction actually means for why robotics companies are racing into this specific market. China's industrial robotics sector had already proven itself technically, but companionship represented a genuinely new demand story, one industrial automation alone was never going to provide, precisely because loneliness itself isn't a niche problem confined to a small slice of the population. Here's the specific product that turned this broader demographic trend into an actual global headline. In June of this year, Shenzhen-based robotics company UBTech, through its consumer brand U-World, unveiled the U1 series at a global launch event, a full-sized, hyper-realistic humanoid robot available in both male and female versions, positioned explicitly as a device for daily companionship, emotional support, lifestyle aesthetics, and social assistance. Here's the detail that shows this wasn't positioned as a niche luxury curiosity. The U1 features silicone skin, natural-looking hair, and what the company describes as an emotional AI engine, priced starting around 120,000 yuan, roughly comparable to a new mid-range sedan, and openly marketed as a genuine solution to loneliness and the difficulties faced by single people. Here's the specific marketing language that immediately became the center of public debate, according to reporting from the launch event itself. U-World's own brand representatives stated the robots would, in their words, never betray you and would love you unconditionally. Language directly borrowed from the vocabulary of human romantic commitment, applied explicitly to a consumer hardware product. Think about what choosing that specific language actually signals about the intended emotional relationship between owner and machine. This wasn't marketed primarily as a labor-saving household device or a novelty gadget. It was marketed using the exact emotional register of a devoted partner, a framing choice that guaranteed public debate the moment it left the stage. Here's where the genuine, substantive criticism of this entire product category actually comes from, and it's worth being precise about the source, because this isn't simply an emotional reaction happening in isolation online. It's grounded in years of published academic research specifically examining gendered companion and social robots. Here's the core argument researchers in this field have consistently raised, documented in peer-reviewed work published in the journal Computers and Human Behavior and elsewhere. AI-empowered social robots, particularly those explicitly gendered and designed to simulate intimate companionship, have been criticized by multiple scholars for objectifying women and reinforcing existing gender stereotypes rather than challenging them. Here's the specific theoretical framework one prominent researcher in this space, Kathleen Richardson, has applied to this exact debate. She draws a direct parallel between the asymmetrical power dynamic found in commercial sex work and the dynamic created when a companion robot is anthropomorphized as an intimate body a user can fully control, arguing that treating a robot body as a stand-in for a human partner risks normalizing the same objectifying logic critics associate with treating actual people as controllable things. Here's the psychological explanation researchers have offered for why these products appeal to users in the first place, drawing on the work of sociologist Sherry Turkle. People's attraction to social robot companions isn't necessarily driven by how capable the machine actually is. It's driven by a completely different factor: the robot's inherent subordination and controllability compared to a real human partner, meaning some of the same qualities that make a companion robot commercially appealing are the exact qualities scholars say make the broader category ethically fraught in the first place. Think about what that framing actually reveals about the core of this debate. The criticism isn't primarily about the robot's realistic appearance on its own. It's about what a fully compliant, fully controllable, simulated partner might normalize, about how some users come to expect real human relationships to work. Here's where this story gets genuinely more complicated than a simple robot versus critics narrative. Because at nearly the exact same moment UBTech was unveiling the U1, China's own government was moving in a very different direction on a closely related technology. Here's the regulatory action that took effect this year. Chinese authorities introduced new rules specifically governing emotionally interactive AI companion apps, the software-based chatbot companions millions of Chinese users had already been forming long-term relationships with, including a complete ban on virtual romantic services for minors, mandatory warnings when users spend extended periods interacting with a chatbot, and a requirement to remove training material specifically designed to encourage compulsive emotional attachment. Here's the reasoning officials gave for that crackdown, according to a Chinese cybersecurity research institute cited in coverage of the new rules. While language-based AI companion services can genuinely provide comfort and relief from loneliness, officials stated they also pose serious risks, including social isolation, the erosion of basic interpersonal skills, and a diminished ability to cope with ordinary human conflict. Here's the human impact of that regulatory shift, documented directly by reporters at Rest of World. On July 15th, one user identified only as Sue lost access to an AI companion she had spent more than a year talking to and confiding in, forced offline specifically because of China's new rules governing emotionally interactive AI. A real documented account of the actual emotional stakes riding on this specific policy shift, not an abstract technology debate playing out only in headlines. Think about the genuine contradiction sitting at the center of this entire story once you place both of these developments side by side. The same country that just restricted software-based AI companions, specifically over concerns about addiction, isolation, and eroding real human relationships, was, within weeks, watching one of its own major robotics companies unveil a physical, hyper-realistic humanoid built around nearly identical emotional marketing language, explicitly targeted at exactly the same lonely and single population the software regulations were designed to protect. Here's why that contradiction isn't simply hypocrisy so much as a genuine, unresolved policy tension. Regulating a chatbot app is a comparatively straightforward technical and legal problem involving content moderation, usage warnings, and age verification inside software China's regulators already have direct authority over, while a physical consumer hardware product sold by a major domestic robotics company, explicitly part of China's broader strategic push to become a global leader in robotics and AI, sits inside a completely different, far more economically significant regulatory category, one the government has far less obvious incentive to restrict in the same way. This is not a simple story of a government unified against this entire technology category. This is a genuine internal tension between consumer protection regulators worried about emotional dependency on one side and an industrial and economic strategy actively promoting humanoid robotics as a strategic growth sector on the other, both operating inside the exact same country at the exact same moment. Before going any further into where the honest, unresolved parts of this debate actually stand, it's worth pulling back and understanding that public reaction to products like the U1 has genuinely been mixed rather than uniformly negative, according to the coverage of its own launch event. Reporting on the U1's debut specifically noted that the robot sparked intense debate online, with some commentators questioning whether the hefty price tag was actually worth it, while others raised the broader philosophical question directly: are AI companions a genuine cure for loneliness or a real threat to human relationships? Think about what that framing actually reveals about the shape of this debate as it's genuinely playing out, rather than how a single dramatic headline might compress it. This isn't simply a story of universal outrage on one side facing down an unbothered tech industry on the other. It's a genuinely split public conversation, with real skepticism about price and practicality sitting alongside deeper, more serious questions about what emotionally realistic companion technology does to the people who come to rely on it, and separate well-established academic criticism, specifically focused on how gendered robot design risks reinforcing objectifying dynamics. Here's the honest concession worth sitting with directly, because credibility matters more than repeating a dramatic headline as though it were a single settled event. Circulating social media content describing a unified wave of outrage among women specifically doesn't trace back to one clearly identifiable protest, survey, or named spokesperson organizing that exact reaction. What's actually documented across genuine reporting and peer-reviewed research is a broader, multi-layered controversy spanning several distinct threads. Published academic feminist critique of gendered social robots dating back years before this specific product launch. Mixed and genuinely divided public. Reaction to UBTech's own launch event, and a separate, very real Chinese government crackdown on software AI companions driven by addiction and social isolation concerns rather than gender-specific criticism at all. Here's why untangling those separate threads actually matters for understanding this story honestly. Collapsing genuine, long-standing academic critique of robot objectification, mixed public reaction to a specific product launch, and an unrelated government regulatory action into one single "women are outraged." Headline flattens a genuinely more interesting and more substantive set of debates into something simpler and more combative than what's actually happening. Here's why none of that flattening actually diminishes how real the underlying concerns are, though. The academic objectification critique is grounded in years of published, peer-reviewed scholarship. The addiction and isolation concerns driving China's chatbot regulations are backed by the government's own cited research and independently corroborated by outlets reporting on real affected users. And the philosophical question raised directly in coverage of the U1's own launch event, whether this technology cures loneliness or deepens it, remains genuinely open and unresolved even among the people building these products themselves. So here's the full picture, start to finish. China's aging population, falling birth rate, and rising share of single adults turned loneliness from a quiet cultural concern into a genuine, actively pursued business opportunity, leading UBTech to unveil the U1, a hyper-realistic companion robot marketed with language borrowed directly from human romantic commitment. That product launch landed inside a much longer-running academic debate over whether gendered social robots risk objectifying women and reinforcing harmful stereotypes, a critique, grounded in years of peer-reviewed research rather than a single viral reaction. At nearly the same moment, China's own government moved to restrict a related but distinct technology, software-based AI companion apps, citing genuine, well-documented concerns about addiction, social isolation, and eroding real human relationships, while simultaneously continuing to support humanoid robotics as a strategic industrial priority. A genuine, unresolved contradiction playing out inside the same government at the same time. What you're actually watching in this story is the same pattern that's accompanied nearly every emotionally significant new technology. Throughout history, from the telephone to social media itself, a genuine, substantive debate about what happens to human connection when an increasingly convincing artificial substitute becomes commercially available, playing out simultaneously in corporate marketing departments, academic journals, government regulatory offices, and millions of individual, deeply personal decisions about what kind of company someone actually wants to keep. This debate hasn't been settled by outrage on one side or confident marketing on the other. It's still genuinely, actively unfolding inside the very same country building the technology at the center of it. If breakdowns like this, the real research and the real policy tensions behind China's biggest technology debates, are useful to you, hit like and subscribe, because there's more of this coming, including a closer look at how China's own consumer protection regulators respond if humanoid companion robots like the U1 eventually face the same scrutiny its software AI companions just did. So here's the honest question for the comments. Do you think the academic concern about companion robots reinforcing objectifying dynamics is the more serious issue here? Or does the addiction and isolation risk driving China's chatbot crackdown worry you more? I read every single one.